You know that feeling when you're handed a process document and it's basically a novel. We've all been there, right? Scrolling and scrolling. Well, today we're going to ditch all that confusion. We are going to learn how to create these crystal clear visual maps using one of the most powerful tools out there, the UML Activity Diagram. So, here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with a problem we all know, that dreaded wall of text. And then, step by step, we're going to build our way to a full, easy-to-read visual solution. Seriously, by the end of this, you'll be able to make these yourself.
All right, let's kick things off with a challenge that I am sure every single one of us has faced. Doesn't matter if you're in tech, business, or, even academia.
Just think about it for a second. You're trying to figure out where to even start, what happens if something goes wrong, and maybe the most important part, who's supposed to do what. It's just so frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah, it usually looks a little something like this. Just a sea of words where all the really critical info, we're talking dependencies, decisions, who's responsible for what, it's all buried. And this is exactly where things go wrong, where steps get missed and projects just go completely off the rails. But what if we could take that entire mess of text and translate it into a simple, intuitive map that anybody could understand in like a single glance? Well, that is exactly what a UML activity diagram is for.
So you can think of an activity diagram as kind of like a superpowered flowchart. It's part of what's called the Unified Modeling Language, or UML for short, and it's built specifically to map out how work gets done. It doesn't just show the steps, it shows who is responsible for every single one of them.
The best way to learn this stuff is just to do it. So let's build one together. We're going to use a fantastic real-world example from our source material, the whole administrative process for creating a new university course section.
So, this is the story we're going to map out. Now, at first, it looks pretty straightforward, right? But as you're about to see, there are some hidden decisions and even tasks that happen at the same time. We're going to follow this request all the way from the beginning to its final publication.
Okay, so every single activity diagram has to start somewhere. That's this little solid black circle, the initial node. It's the official starting gun. From there, every step in the process, like submit section request, gets its own box with rounded corners. We call that an action node. And notice how they're named with verbs, like do this. That's a really key best practice.
Okay, now that we have the basic flow, let's get into the really cool part, how these diagrams handle real-world messiness. Processes are almost never a simple straight line. There are choices to be made, and sometimes things that have to happen all at once.
Right, back to our university example. After the registrar's office verifies eligibility, we hit a crossroads. Are the course prerequisites met? We show this with a diamond shape, the decision node. Now, the flow can only go down one of the paths leaving the diamond, and which way it goes depends on a guard condition, like is the answer to our question, yes, prerequisites met, or no, they're not.
A little later on, after the department chair approves the request, two different things need to happen at the same time. The chair has to assign an instructor, and the registrar needs to figure out room requirements. To show this, we use a fork bar. It splits the flow into two parallel paths that run concurrently. The process can't move on until both are done, and that's where the join bar comes in. It brings them back together.
And this, right here, this is probably the number one thing that trips people up when they're starting out. So let's make it super clear. A decision diamond is for an either-or situation. You can only take one path. A fork bar is for an and situation. All paths happen at the same time. If you mix those two up, it totally changes the meaning of your whole diagram. Okay, so far our diagram is showing the what and the when of the process. But now let's add the really crucial part, the who. And this is where activity diagrams just become so incredibly powerful using a feature called swim lanes.
Swim lanes are actually a really simple but genius idea. Just picture a swimming pool with lanes for each swimmer. That's it. We just divide our diagram into columns and give each one a label for the person or department responsible. So for our example, we have one for the registrar's office, one for the department chair, and one for facilities management.
And would you look at the difference that makes? By just dropping each action into the right person's lane, we can see in a split second who is accountable for every single step. See how the arrows cross between the lanes? That clearly shows us where work gets handed off from one person to the next. It just makes everything so transparent.
All right, with our diagram all put together, we can see the whole story, start to finish. It's great. But as we've seen, making a good diagram, one that's clear and accurate and actually useful, means you got to avoid a few common pitfalls.
So here are the top mistakes that beginners usually make. We've already talked a lot about the fork versus decision confusion, but there are others, like writing vague conditions on your decision paths, or accidentally putting an action in the wrong person's lane, or using passive words instead of active verbs. So you should always be asking yourself, is this a choice, or is this a parallel task? Who is really responsible for this step, and does the name I gave this action clearly say what's being done?
And that right there is exactly why these things matter so much. They create a shared visual language. They let the business people, who really understand the process, and the technical teams who actually have to build the system get on the exact same page. Can you imagine pointing to a diagram and having everyone agree, yes, that is exactly how it's supposed to work? All that ambiguity is just gone.
So I'm going to leave you with this challenge. Think about some complicated, confusing process in your own life. It could be a team workflow, a school project, whatever. Now that you have the tools, how could you turn that chaos into a clear, actionable, and understandable activity diagram? The power to bring clarity out of that complexity? Well, it's in your hands now.